I come from a background where the main thing that was emphasized is like, you need to work really hard. So I think whatever it is that I would have chosen, that messaging still would have been the same, whether it was like being an accountant or being a comedian. It was like, well, you're going to need to work really hard at this. Hey, this is Adam Mamawala, and this is SoundAdvice.
Welcome to SoundAdvice.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Of course.
Would love to talk a little bit about your journey of
Sure.
doing comedy full-time for nearly a decade.
Yeah. What would you like to know?
How did you get into it?
I started when I was in college, which is amazingly like half of my life ago at this point, but I was 18. I started kind of on a whim, like on a recommendation from a friend of mine who just thought that my general vibe and like the way I would kind of make jokes about things in our day-to-day was like kind of stand-up-ish. Mm-hmm. And he recommended, he was like, I feel like you'd be really good at stand-up. You should give it a shot. And for whatever reason, I was like, okay. And so I went to an open mic in New Jersey. It went like well enough I'm sure if I saw it now, I would be mortified. But at the time, it like went well enough that I was like, oh, I think I could do this. And so then I got into it while I was in college, and I won like a statewide contest when I was a junior. That was kind of the first moment where I was like, okay, maybe this is like more than just a hobby. And then I graduated into full-on financial crisis, and it appeared that my prospects were limited anyway. So I was like, well, if I'm going to be broke, I might as well do what I love to do. And so I gave it a shot and started making money doing this like before I really thought I would, which was kind of a cool thing. So at the time, it was a lot of touring colleges. I don't do that as much anymore. After that, I actually moved into New York City. And that's, I think, when I really like cut my teeth and I think got good at comedy. Before, I think I was largely operating on charisma. But so I've been making a living as a comic for over 10 years at this point.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks.
What would you say inspires your writing, and how has that evolved from when you started to where you are now? Yeah,
that's a good question. I think my feeling with comics is like, if you're evolving as a person, which hopefully you are, your comedy should evolve along with it. So like when I look back on some of my earlier work, it wasn't bad, but I just think it was very much representative of like who I was at the time, which like as a 23-year-old, I didn't have that much to say about anything of great value because I hadn't lived that much life. So like at the time when I started, it was a lot more observational comedy. I did some impressions and stuff like that. But to some degree, I feel like it was like low-hanging fruit. And I think as I've matured as a person, my comedy has matured along with it. And so now I would describe my stuff as like very autobiographical. It's mostly stuff about my life. And then any observational stuff that I have, it's always like in the lens of how does that pertain to my experience with it.
I know you have a bit on it, so I have to ask you. Mm-hmm. How does your family feel about you pursuing comedy full-time?
Yeah, they are. I do have a joke about the fact that they are like too supportive to the point where I'm concerned that it will affect my success because, you know, most artists' origin stories is like, you know, no one believed in me and everybody told me not to do it. Whereas my parents are like, yeah, we're so proud of you. But no, my parents are supportive of it. I think it would have been a very different conversation if I had been like, yeah, I'm going to drop out of college to pursue this. I think because they knew that I was getting a degree, they were a little less concerned because they were like, well, you know, you have something to fall back on. But I also think that I come from a background where the main thing that was emphasized is like, you need to work really hard. So I think whatever it is that I would have chosen, that messaging still would have been the same, whether it was like being an accountant or being a comedian. It was like, well, you're going to need to work really hard at this. And I think once my parents recognized that I was like willing to do the work and had a realistic view of like how much effort this was going to take, they had no reason not to believe in me. And I also think because of the timing of it all, if I had said, hey, Mom and Dad, I'm turning down like a 6-figure job offer to go be a starving artist in New York, I think maybe they would have advised me otherwise. But at the time, I didn't have a lot of great other opportunities anyway. So they were like, yeah, I mean, let's see what happens.
How does your background influence your comedy?
It influences it a lot. I mean, so my dad is Indian and my mom is, of German descent, but American. And it definitely informs my comedy because I feel like I get to approach things from like multiple angles. Like being biracial is this kind of interesting thing where you kind of like fit in everywhere and nowhere at the same time. So it's fun for me at shows to be talking about things from a perspective that I think is pretty unique. I think maybe less so now. I feel like when my parents got married, it was not as common to see people like from different backgrounds getting together. Now it's funny to meet a lot of like younger biracial people who are like, oh my gosh, like your experience is so similar to my own. I just this past weekend met a guy who literally like his dad was from India and his mom was from Minnesota or something like that. And he's like, it was like uncanny listening to you talk about this because I felt like my experiences were so unique, but like it's cool to hear somebody who experienced the same sort of stuff.
Yeah, I know one of your skits that you've done too is around this casting director who told you like it's important in this field to know how you're being perceived and where you fit in.
Right.
And you were like, well, I'm in the ambiguity category. Like, what does that mean? And how have you navigated that in this space?
Yeah, I think it's something that has impacted like the acting world more than stand-up. Like in stand-up, as long as you tell people who you are, you can. It doesn't really matter that much. I think and it's not as much of a pursuit anymore. But when I was doing more acting auditions, I felt like I would kind of get caught in this space where I would get auditions to play Indian characters, but then the feedback I would get was like, well, you don't really like read as Indian, or like the subtext was like, you're not Indian enough. But then also I'm too something else to be like the generic white guy character. So I felt like it was a hindrance in the like TV film world, and weirdly kind of an advantage in the commercials and like print space, because, you know, you look at any commercial or print ad and everything looks like a community college brochure. It's like, you know, it's fairly transparent. It's like, hey, look, 2 black people and 2 white people and and me and like one other woman who like could be anything, and then like 2 Latin people. Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I think by and large it's been overall like a good thing for me. I think I mean, we don't have time to unpack this, but given the current state of the world, you know, perhaps being diverse is not such a good thing anymore. But I would say, generally speaking, it's been like a positive for me. And there's somewhat of an element of like not really fitting in anywhere or like gatekeeping from one side or the other. But yeah, generally, I want to believe that it's been like a positive thing.
When you started stand-up, you said in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And then moved to New York. So I'm getting my MBA currently, and in one of my classes, they brought in a stand-up comedian to help us with public speaking. Okay. And he said 2 things, and I want to get your take on them.
Sure.
One is that everyone who lives in New York should try stand-up once.
Oh gosh. I feel like there's too many people doing stand-up. We need fewer comics and fewer podcasts. That's my hot take for this interview.
Yeah.
As I talk into this microphone. But yeah, I mean, I think everyone should try it once who thinks they want to try it. I don't think like everybody should do it. It bothers me when stand-up comedy is used as like, oh, this is a punishment for losing your fantasy football league. Like,
oh yeah, no.
It should be.
Anytime.
Exactly. Yeah. Anytime somebody will come up to me after a show and be like, oh, I've always like wanted to try stand-up, but you know, I've never like had the guts to do it. I always encourage them to try it, because my perspective is like, worst case scenario, you bomb and you feel bad for 20 minutes, but like you'll be happy that you gave it a shot. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be learned from like the ability to speak in public. I mean, as someone who does that for a living, the amount of times that I've been at a wedding and seen somebody like holding the microphone like this, and I want to just like run up and help them. Yeah. So I do think there's a lot of value in that. But what was the other part? You said everyone should try stand-up once.
Okay, yeah. So the other take was he was saying, well, obviously he's speaking to us like in a business setting, and it's about like how to become better at public speaking at your job. And he said something along the lines of, and it stood with me and it kind of reframed stand-up a bit for me. He's like, as a stand-up comedian, you're going into a room where people expect you to be funny. The bar is high to like make that connection. Whereas in the business setting, like no one is funny, no one expects you to be funny, like the bar is super low. So you have you should be trying this and using humor in the workplace. And that was kind of the framing he did it in. So in terms of stand-up, like, how did you overcome, you know, meeting the bar? And then also as it changes, like, so there's stand-up going into a room of people are fully new and not aware of you. Then there's you going on tour. That's a different audience. I know you're doing a specific tour upcoming, and I want to talk about that too. But like, how do you meet people's expectations?
So, I mean, there's a lot there. I'd say, first of all, the commonality between like public speaking in a stand-up context and public speaking in a work context is that it's important to remember that by and large, people are rooting for you. Like, if people pay money to go to a stand-up show, they're hoping that you're funny. They don't want you to be not funny. And if people are sitting there in a meeting and you're about to speak to them, they hope that you're interesting, and they hope that you're not boring, and they hope that you know your stuff. So I think there's a certain comfort in remembering that, like, people want you to do well, and so you're already coming in with that as like a baseline. I think comedy is interesting because, like, a lot of people are afraid of public speaking just in the sense of like getting up in front of people.
Yeah.
But comedy is that, except heightened, because not only do you want people to listen to you, you're trying to elicit a very specific reaction from them. For me, I was always comfortable in front of people. And I don't know if that's something that's just like innate, or you're born with it or you're not. But like, I was kind of always that kid who was like, okay, well, if we do a group project, you're going to be the one speaking. So I was used to being up in front of people. So for me, that part of stand-up wasn't the hard part. I think the hard part was like putting together an act and figuring out like what I could be saying in front of people that would be compelling. But I definitely agree that if you can incorporate humor into like a work context, you will set yourself apart, because people don't expect it. And they're at best, you're hoping that people like pay attention to you. But I think if you can throw something in like an organic way that doesn't feel forced or contrived, like, it does go a long way. And I host corporate events sometimes, and I have seen both versions of this. I've seen the person give like the speech that they're just completely like deadpan and bland the whole time, and you feel people like losing energy and starting to stop paying attention. But you also see the difference when somebody knows how to like incorporate little things that make them unique, or things that are personal, or things that don't feel like they're reading from a script. And it goes a long way. I mean, I mentioned weddings before, but like, we've all seen a great wedding speech and one where you're like, oh my God, this is painful.
Yeah.
So it's exactly.
Do you change your material depending on the audience going in? So I know you're doing Armed Forces Entertainment tour soon.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're catering your material to? Or?
So that, for something like that, and it's the second time I've done like a bigger tour for the troops, they're very specific about like what you can and cannot say. So in that way, kind of similar to like a corporate gig, when you're given the parameters of like what they want you to do, it's kind of up to you to agree that you can do it or that you can't. So for Armed Forces Entertainment, there are some things that are like common sense, which is like, don't make fun of the military. But the big thing for them is like, as the military, we are supposed to be apolitical. So like, please don't do political material. Like, we know it's a hot topic right now, but like, please refrain from doing that. And there are some shows on military bases where like there's children there because it's a base where the whole family lives there. So obviously in that case, they're like, please refrain from stuff that's more, sexual content or inappropriate language, that sort of thing. My feeling is, if you agree to take the money to do a show knowing the rules, it's on you as a performer to adhere to them. I think it's kind of funny when comics sometimes are like, oh, like, I'm being censored. And it's like, no, you're not. You agree to do the job, and you do the job, or you don't. Like, no one's forcing you to take any work that you don't want to take. In general, to answer your original question, I try to write an act that works anywhere. I think that's something that being on the road has helped me with, because like you can get great in New York, but if you only spend time in New York, or if you're in your own little bubble, like a joke about the difference between Bed-Stuy and Williamsburg is not going to work in Indiana. Like, it's just not. No. So I think I've tried to always be conscious of like, will this work in New York, but also in Alabama? And I also think that like, it's very easy to get stuck in the kind of echo chamber of wherever you are. And I have seen people who do very, brazen, liberal material in front of a friendly audience in Brooklyn, who I am quite sure would not have the guts to do that in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And my feeling is like, if you're going to stand on business, stand on business. Like, don't have an act that you're only going to do for like-minded people. Like, say what you want to say. And the real craft of it is like, I have done shows for audiences that are like deeply conservative, and I'm telling them my liberal jokes, and they're still laughing because I feel like I'm going about it in a way that they still find the humor in it. So I think that's kind of the craft of it, and the nuance of it is like, how can I make somebody laugh at something that they don't even agree with because I'm presenting it in a way that's still funny.
You share a lot of clips from your tours and from your shows on social.
Yeah.
That obviously amplifies the audience and the exposure. How do you feel like social has affected your career?
I think social media, while it's like frustrating a lot and I long for a day that I don't have to use it at all, I think the cool thing about it is that it's given people a chance to find their own audience, and it's eliminated some of the gatekeepers that used to exist in entertainment. Like, for a long time, you were very much beholden to like, well, if these club bookers don't want to book me, there's nothing I can do. Or if this person doesn't want to represent me, or if I can't get into whatever festival, I feel like I'm held back. Whereas now, social media, while the algorithm is, kind of hard to figure out, if you can, and if you can find your people, you're unstoppable. Like, it doesn't even matter if peers of yours think you're funny or not. Like, I've seen people in the past few years, especially during the pandemic, that went from being like, I think I'm going to quit, to doing theaters. And it happens quickly. So I think it can be frustrating a lot of the time, but ultimately I do think it's a good thing for performers, because like, it allows you to have a following and to keep track of people in a way that you couldn't before. So as someone who's like finally now, after years and years and years of doing this, touring and headlining more and starting to have people who are like, I specifically came to see you, it's a cool thing to know that like Instagram has that kind of reach, or TikTok has that kind of reach.
Do you cater your content differently on social?
Not necessarily. I think I want it to be like representative of what people are going to see if they come out to a show. I think the tricky thing about social is not giving away your entire act. And I think that's why you see so many crowd work clips, is because people have just figured out like, well, if I don't want to like burn through all of the material that I have, I've got to post other stuff that's interesting. And so when I do shows, I'm happy that at least thus far the feedback is like, oh yeah, I had like seen some of that stuff on social media, but there was also a lot of new stuff that I hadn't seen. So it's kind of this like push and pull of, you want to be present on social media and you want to be posting a lot, but unless you are prolific and can write a new hour every 6 months, like you don't want to just give everything away, because even if people like you, if they come out to a live show based on what they've seen on social media and then everything they hear is stuff that they've already heard before, they're just not really going to like it that much. And I think that's the big challenge with comedy as opposed to music, where like, you can go see the Rolling Stones and you want them to play the song they wrote 50 years ago.
Yeah, that
in
you've
comedy,
heard 100 times.
Exactly. In comedy, it's the opposite, where it's like, if people have seen it before, they want to see new stuff. And there's this different expectation of like this constant output of material that is really, really hard. Obviously, some people, it comes easier to them than others, but like, it takes a really long time to craft a good hour. And I think that's why you see when people pop and they get like their moment, their second or third special is almost always not as good, because like they might have spent 10 years getting up to that first hour and now they're hot. So Netflix is like, hey, we want another hour 6 months from now. And of course it's not going to be as good, because like it takes time.
That's so fascinating, because I didn't think of it in that way, where it's almost like you're cannibalizing yourself.
You are,
your tickets and your live sales by putting out too much.
Right.
Does that mean you hold back on your best stuff for social?
No, not on my best stuff. But I think that like, it's a weird thing, because sometimes I'll have something that's very new, that's like topical, and there's this pressure of like, well, if I don't get it out into the world now, while this is like a hot button issue, it's probably not going to pick up any steam.
Yeah.
But it's also a joke that's like 70% of the way there, and I don't want to be putting stuff out that's like not fully cooked. So it's tricky. I mean, I think that's why you see a lot of crowd work. You see a lot of people posting like older stuff, because it used to be that the model was like, I'm going to work on an act for X amount of time, and then I'm going to like share it all at once via an album or now like a special. But the weird thing is, like, I think of things as being new if I don't have them like on an album, but they're not really new if people have seen them already on social media. So I don't try to like hold back the best stuff, because I think the best stuff is the stuff that's going to go viral and the stuff that people are going to like remember you for. And to some degree, they do want to see a joke that's like their favorite joke. But yeah, it's tough. I think I would be curious to know how it is for musicians, because I think it's just like different rules.
Yeah.
But yeah, as in like modern comedy, it's like a tough balance.
I think also something different between musicians and comedians is like, yes, you guys both tour, but your musicians can record in their bedrooms and put things out and promote their material and test it out. Like, there are other revenue streams. Do you find that comedy and your revenue streams are still very touring heavy, or have you found other ways to diversify your revenue?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have. For me, part of it is just like understanding what my skill set is and trying to figure out other things that I would be good at that are like under the umbrella of comedy. So the bulk of my income is still from stand-up, but I also do like corporate hosting and freelance writing, and you know, I have a small-ish podcast that I make some money from. So like, I think that's an important thing, is to not necessarily put all your eggs in one basket. Like, I think most people when they start out doing stand-up, they're like, this is all I want to do forever, and like I don't care about anything else. But I think if you look at it from that viewpoint, like, you're not giving yourself as many routes to where you want to go as you could. So I've always tried to be open-minded to like other revenue streams, especially because then that gives you the agency to not be chasing down crappy gigs for $200 because you really feel like you need it to make rent. Like, anytime I do a corporate event or something like that, it's not like I'm doing it because I'm passionate about hosting an award show for people who work in hedge funds. Like, I don't care, but I look at it as like, okay, so if I make X amount of money from this, that gives me the freedom to do a show in New York for $20 and a drink ticket and not be stressed out about money. And then that's making me better as a comic, and that's getting me closer to whatever the next hour is or the next thing. And you're basically like, instead of having a day job or walking dogs, you're like supporting yourself through your own skills. And of course the dream is to be like touring full time and doing clubs and theaters and all that, and like not having to worry about the other stuff. But I always think it's a valuable thing to like figure out what your specific skill set like allows you to do in a more broad way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're also signed up with SoundExchange.
I am signed up with SoundExchange.
And there's been, we've been talking to a lot of comedians, and the shift of understanding audio rights and like ownership of your audio and monetizing off of that is, a big change.
Yeah.
And I feel like also an opportunity for different revenue. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like how you found out, why you signed up? I know probably the album.
So when I did my first album, which is now, I guess it was 2017, I did it through a record label. And that was just kind of like part of what they did was they also would send the album to Sirius and to SoundExchange. And like, I guess it's kind of up to the folks at Sirius XM what they take and what they don't. But I think the cool thing about SoundExchange is that as a comic, there are very few ways to monetize things that you've already done. Whereas like if you're a singer, I mean, you listen to a hit song from 40 years ago and you're like, oh my God, this person's still making money from this one song. Like there's no comic in the world who's still making money from a joke 40 years ago. It's a cool thing to be able to have a body of work and then still make money from it, because comics really didn't have residuals. Like if you're an actor and you're on a show that's syndicated, like you're going to keep getting checks. And if you're a singer and you have like a hit song, you're going to keep getting money. But I think SoundExchange was the first time that as comedians, we were able to get like passive income, which is huge. And I mean, I know some people who, however it got into the, Sirius XM algorithm, they made like a lot of money from SoundExchange, and it really helped them out at a time where maybe their touring wasn't going as well, or the pandemic happened, or whatever it may be. So Yeah, it's been great. And I also think as someone who has the ability to work clean, I kind of like that it incentivizes you to do that, because for us, like the real moneymaker is getting on Laugh USA, which is like the clean comedy channel. So it's been cool. And I think much like any of the other stuff that I do, the more money that you're making from other areas that allow you to like focus on the work and focus on the art just makes your life so much easier. So I think it's awesome.
I want to talk about your 2 albums.
Sure, yeah.
Both of them charted #1 on iTunes in the comedy section.
Yeah.
And that's insane. Your
Yeah.
debut and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
your second one. How did you achieve that success?
Well, I'll be very transparent with you. I think it's somewhat of an illusion, because what we learned is that any pre-sales count towards first day album sales. So the cool thing about that is in the months leading up to an album release, if you really, push it on social media and tell everybody about it, and you like encourage everybody to buy it in advance, all of those pre-sales get counted as like first day of sales. So listen, it's tough. If your album just happens to come out the same day as Chris Rock puts out a new record, like it's probably not going to happen. But for me, in both cases, I think I did a good job of like promoting it a lot and talking it up, and then clearly enough people bought it either in advance or the day of that it was #1. And that's a cool thing, because it's like both the albums themselves and the #1 on iTunes thing. It's like one of those things that nobody can take away from you. And so I think a lot of this career is like checking off those little boxes where you're like, yes, I'm hard on myself and there's a million other things I want to do, but like it's cool to have those little things that get to be in your bio or like on your resume forever. So yeah, and I'm still proud of both of them, even though the one is like, gosh, I guess 8 years old. Like I can still listen to it and be like, yeah, I like this. Like I think I'm better now, but I still think it's good.
Doing this for a decade, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years, and what does making it for you look like?
Gosh, I mean, I think if you're ambitious, the idea of making it is always shifting. Like I feel like you're always moving that bar for yourself. And I think I try to remind myself as much as I can that like when I started out doing this, my first and only real goal was like, I want to see if I can make a living doing this. And for as long as that's been the case, I feel like that's something to be proud of, because like most people don't. Like most people who go into any artistic field never end up supporting themselves that way. So, I'm proud of that. And also, there's so much more that I want from myself and from my career. So I think like at this moment, if 5 or 10 years from now, I was at a point where I'm like consistently headlining full weekends at clubs and selling them out and, drawing a lot, and hopefully like either doing theaters or like on my way to doing theaters, Netflix special, Tonight Show, all those things that like everybody wants. I think that's really the bar. But I also think that like, even if what I'm doing now, which is continuing to make a living doing this, is like the peak of what I do, I still want to allow myself to be proud of that. It's hard because I want so much more. And it's a very competitive field. And, like anything, it's not a meritocracy. It's not always fair. But yeah, I think 10 years from now to be at a point where like people know who I am, and I have like my dream career is to do theaters and be like very well known amongst my specific niche of fans, but still be able to walk down the street and like most people don't know who I am. That's like a perfect career to me. I don't need to be like famous. I just want to have like my people who are ride or die and will come out to see me every year or two that I'm in their city. And like that to me, that's enough. Now, if I achieve that, would I want to have a million other things? Probably. But like, I think for right now, that's the goal.
I hope that we manifested that right now.
I hope so. We're going to find out. We'll do a follow-up interview in 10 years.